Are we on? Are we good? All right, we good? All right, I am going to call this meeting of the Monona Grove School District annual meeting and budget hearing to order at 6:02 p.m. Has there been a declaration of public notice? Yes. Great, thank you, Tish. All right, first item on the agenda is I would like to welcome everybody here. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Janice. Thank everyone for coming today. This is, I think, my 5th annual meeting, and this might be the fullest house we've had in quite a long time. So I really appreciate everyone coming today, everyone watching either live or later. It makes a big difference for us to pay attention to what's happening at the annual meeting and the budget. So thank you for coming. Our first order of business is to elect a chairperson for this meeting. The board does not chair. We just sort of watch as you all participate in the annual meeting. So can I get a nomination for a chairperson, please? Yes, Reed.
Yeah, I, Reed Foster of 3011 Red Hawk Trail, Cottage Grove, move to nominate Aaron Bibb to serve as the chairperson of the 2025 annual meeting and budget hearing.
Great, thank you, Reed. Aaron, any concerns, or would you like to withdraw your nomination, or are you?
Nothing says this can't be a contested election.
Any other recommendations or nominations for chairpersons of the meeting today? Okay, we have one nomination. All those in favor of Aaron Bibb chairing, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Welcome, Chairperson Aaron.
My new title.
Start making a business card.
All right. With my great powers as chairperson, I think I'm going to make some introductions. I'd like to introduce the members of our Board of Education. We have Elizabeth Cook, we have Rochelle Miller, Philip Haven, Janice Stone, Eric Hartz, Stephanie Lehman, and Janice Stone again, it says, but I'm going to say Susan Manning. We have Superintendent Dr. Tanya Frederick, and our Deputy Superintendent Kristen Sobocinski. Yes? Yes. And our parliamentarian is Attorney Doug Whitty of Boardman and Clark. Elizabeth was supposed to do that, it says. Okay. So I am now to announce that we have available the minutes from the 2024 annual meeting. They can be found on pages 8 to 10 of the annual meeting booklet. And now we're going to have our superintendent's report from Dr. Tanya Frederick.
Good evening. As I begin, I wish to thank the Board of Education, the MG School District, students, families, and staff, as well as the Monona and Cottage Grove community for the warm welcome in my first year. It's been a joy to put together this presentation as we look backwards and then also look forward to the work ahead. No? This? Oh, wrong one. There we go. It's okay, you can't get fired from that. Last year, as we started in 2024 in July, we began our board meetings always with a celebration of excellence, and that was one of the things we started. And this was to showcase our students, along with the amazing staff and families that continue to support our students, not only to provide the opportunities in school, but also the many clubs and activities and other extensions beyond the classroom. And so we heard about things like the Culture Fair, service trip for MG21, Cottage Grove Student and Family Organization for their Fall Fest organizations, how clubs and activities even get started at the middle school, along with the annual Strings Fest, Model UN Mathletes, and our Science Olympiads. So you can see a couple pictures here that just highlight some of our students, but it was a really great way to continue to begin each board meeting this last year, really centered around the purpose of the organization, which is our students. So as we kick off tonight, really want to reground us in our vision, and our vision is that bold inspiration of who we want to be, which is engaged learning where equity is prioritized, in addition to our daily work around our mission, which is to create a safe, equitable, and inclusive learning community for all. And that really drives the day-to-day work that we have. As we think about how we bridge those things together, our mission, which is how we work, and that aspiration of the future, and we think about that bridge really being around the strategic objectives that the Board of Education and the larger community developed in 2022, which has 4 pillars: teaching and learning, highly effective personnel, engaged community, and fiscal sustainability and efficiency as those benchmarks for us to move ahead. You can see them here, the 4 pillars, and under each pillar there are 2 strategic objectives. And we continue to look at those as we round out that strategic plan that wraps up in 2027. How we do that work continues to be grounded in all of our equity non-negotiables that were created by the district in 2020 and adopted by the board. It is really our commitment without compromise about how we show up and how we make decisions. As we think about moving forward to 2027, one of the things that we did for moving into 25-26 was to really move past those 4 pillars and dig a little deeper in what are some research-based key indicators that can help us measure our progress moving forward as we think of how we move to 2027. And that research is really based in the Redefining Ready work, which is really promoting equity for all of our students to be able to be life, college, and career ready. So wanting to expand a little bit about what does that mean for each one of these pillars as we move forward. So as we think about that strategic plan in teaching and learning and that strategic objectives, there's 4 pieces of data that we collect from our students every year from their perception. I feel like I belong in class, my voice is heard and valued in classes, and I have a trusted adult in school. And so one of the things we've been thinking a lot about is when we look at those numbers, what's the why underneath them? And on the bottom of this iceberg, which we don't often talk about, is why those things are important. We know that it's really important to bridge our academic, but also social emotional learning for all kids. We know that a positive impact on well-being and academic success and overall development happens when kids feel seen and heard. We also know that having a trusted adult is one of the most impactful things a school can do for kids to make sure that they have those. Another set of indicators that we continue to look at is attendance. We know that when students attend 90% or more of the school year, they are more likely to be successful in reading, better post-secondary outcomes, along with better regulation skills and things that help them really be successful later in life. In addition to, we talk about kids being in 2 or more extracurricular activities, and also monitoring our out-of-school suspensions, because we know that when kids are in school, that's where they learn, and sometimes activities are also the things that really help students be able to engage, and how important those things are. We started a new continuous improvement process this summer. We call it SAIL. And when we moved into that work, we really thought, how are we going to set down some markers of what we want to strive to achieve? We're always talking about our children being able to set some goals and strive, and what is that going to look like for us as educators? So 2 goals that we've set with our school community. The first is to improve literacy, and you can see looking at proficiency for our 3rd through 8th graders, and then also having a ACT readiness benchmark. These goals are really set around what we know, different markers that kids hit that help them be successful in school, and more importantly, when they leave school and they move forward. You can see that we also have a math one, wanting to increase that proficiency of our students, and then also increase our proficiency in the ACT. When we talk about accountability and transparency, we've been working with each of the board committees, so to set some key performance indicators that each of those committees will be looking at. One, it is to be transparent with the community of where we're failing on these things, where we want to be, and the other is also for accountability, so that we can see that we're moving forward. And so this is the start. We're not done with these yet, but wanted to share. You can see the stuff that's grayed out either didn't exist before or it's embargoed data that we're not unable to show yet. But you can see we've made some strides in some places, but we also have an opportunity to continue to grow. And so when we think about third grade reading proficiency, we know that that is an incredibly strong indicator of success future in the school years. Algebra 2, C or better, we know that students that hit that marker are more likely to be successful in a post-secondary technical college or four-year school programming. So each of these things have some data behind them about why they're important, but we really want to continue thinking about monitoring them, setting some goals, trying to strive for those goals, and if we don't meet them, what's getting in the way, what are those barriers, and how do we move forward? Not just about kids and what they think and feel and how they're achieving, but also how do we continue to have engaged community. So what you have in front of you is the family feedback from our back to school nights that occurred in late August as families were coming forward. So how would you rate your experience to back to school night, 5 being the highest rating, and you can see the composite score for each one of the district schools that are there. So pretty good satisfaction with families about what happens in those nights. Also, as we're looking at other pillars and thinking about how we're continuing to monitor that progress going forward. Last year, one of the things that this board did was to create a finance and operations committee. And in that committee, it is made up of 3 board members, our deputy superintendent, and then 2 community people that are part of that committee to continue to look at that. So they continue to look at different things that are really important about how we also can tell how we're faring as a district. And you heard a lot about that tonight when Kristen gets to her report. But one of those things is food service participation in our trend rate. Why is that important? You can see some really great data here about what our school nutrition program looked like in 24-25. Current participation rate is at 47%. One of our key indicators we'd like to do is increase that by 5%. When you look at our current operating costs, we're operating at a small deficit. We are, our cost, a percentage of revenue is about 108%. So we know this is something we want to continue to monitor, so as we move forward, we're making sure that our revenues and expenditures are balanced. But we are proud to say that we continue to have a fund balance there, continue to serve breakfast, continue to think about how do we make sure that kids have healthy breakfast and food in their tank before they get to the day. Another area, these are more of those quality indicators that we look at for our board committee. One is transportation cost. Still have to figure out what that target is, some work to do, but you can see some of those things about why we monitor that. This is for 26-27, where we're at. We first started working with Nelson's in 2014-15. We currently have 42 routes that run throughout the day. We have Stop Finder app, which all of you that have kids that ride the bus hopefully are super familiar with it. You can track the bus, see where it's at. We have 2,335 users of that, which is pretty great because we have 2,153 riders. So we are really getting a lot of families logged into that, making sure that they are using that and can know, instead of calling the bus company, where's my kid, all those things. We did see an increase in our Buy a Bus Seat program. We have 230 families, students who are now are now paying to have their students ride a bus, even though because they don't have bus services there. That is an increase of about 30 students from last year, and last year we did increase the fee, and so we went from $400 to $600 for purchasing that round trip, and we have not seen an impact on ridership at this point. Other things that we continue to look at as personnel committee comes together, I'm very thankful to the MGEA and their leadership, including WEAC, as we continue to work together with the board committee and personnel to monitor some of those things. New hire retention rate, how do we make sure that people we're retaining? Number of open positions at any time, how many average days to fill, exit completion interviews, some of those things as we continue to look at just different indicators that we want to. We have talked in the boardroom about getting to the 75th percentile for our pay. How do we make sure that we're really competitive for our students? As we talk about increasing our data for students and learning, we need to make sure that we're a highly attractive district for people to come to. And when they come, we want them to stay. and be part of that. So we really think about how these things come together. We know that educating a child from 4K to graduation, it's a long game. It's patience, purpose, and the unwavering belief that every year, every moment, and every relationship matters. It's been a real joy to be here this year, to continue to work with the staff, work with families, work with the community, and continue to see this come alive. Our vision inspires us. Our mission guides us. Those strategic objectives are our direct action, and the equity non-negotiables really anchor us to our values, and then the indicators of leading data to track our progress. Again, this is the reason we're here. We continue to show up every day. It was great to be back in the buildings when school started, and the energy and the kids, parents being real glad that their kids were back to a routine. And then also just seeing all of the work that the teachers do and everything come together as we're on day 10 of school. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick. I feel like announcing that the Treasurer's Report can be found on pages 11 and 12 of the meeting booklet. A complete auditor's report will be presented to the Board of Education upon completion of the official audit report by CLA and is expected to be presented in December of 2025. Now, the budget hearing portion of the meeting, our Deputy Superintendent Kristen Sobaczynski will present the 2025-26 proposed budget, which is outlined beginning on page 13 of the booklet.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening. I feel like I start all of my presentations with just a little bit of background about school finance basics, just so if there are people in the audience or listening that don't have that background, it's good to just ground them in exactly what we're talking about. Really, the revenue limit calculation drives our revenue, 80% or more. And that calculation relies on 3-year average enrollment and a per pupil increase that's set in the state budget. So there's really 2 ways only for a district to increase revenues, and it's either your enrollment goes up or the state gives you a per pupil increase. I'm pleased to say that the state budget did include a $325 per pupil increase. That was included in the state biennial budget. Unfortunately, the per pupil history hasn't been very kind to school districts. When the revenue limits went into place in 1993, those annual increases were set to inflation, and then in about 2009-10, it sort of flattened out, and then as you can see with that big dip of that $554, that was when Act 10 went into place. And since that time, districts really haven't been able to keep up to inflation. The green line shows you where we should be on a per pupil basis based on inflation, which is $413.12, and we're at $300.25. What this means is that we actually receive $4,209 less per student than we would have had those per pupil increases been tied to inflation. And that does result in a lot of money, $13.8 million that we would have more to spend for our operations. The good news is our revenue limit history has increased, not hugely, but at least there is a little bit of an increase from year to year. We'd like to see that continue. This is really a reflection of our resident students that attend our schools and our resident students that go out to other schools through open enrollment. You can see as a whole how these revenue limit per pupil amounts have impacted Wisconsin state schools. In 2012, we were above the national average, 11th in the country. When you look at 2020, we fell to below the average and ranked 25th. And by 2023, we'd fallen to 26th place. In the Midwest, we used to be first in 2002, and we have fallen to 7th in 2023. So this is really an area that if you support public schools, really reach out to your representatives and talk about the importance of funding our public schools. So how are districts funded? Once you generate that pot of money, and you get that revenue limit, then you get state aid. So state aid is property tax relief. It's not new money, and actually in the 25-27 biennial budget, we didn't get any more state aid allocation for schools. So that means Most districts, depending upon their individual characteristics, are going to receive less aid, and it's going to be more pressure on property taxes. Because once you have that pot of money and you subtract what you get from the state, that's your property taxes. Simple calculation here outlining what I just said. So how is state aid distributed? There's a big calculation, but it's really three main factors. It's the property value per student, how the formula determines how rich of a district you are, the cost per student, and enrollment. Districts with that lower property value per student receive more in state aid, and districts with higher property value per student receive less in state aid. So the state aid average property value per student is just over $1 million, and this is based on the July 1st estimate, so after the preliminary budget was already established. Our property value per student is almost right at average. So you would think on average we would receive the average state aid that another district would get. However, our aid to cost ratio is declining from last year to this year, meaning that 38.1% of our costs are covered by state aid. The rest are covered by property taxes. We are projected to see a reduction in state aid based on the July 1st aid estimate, which is different than the preliminary budget, but I wanted to provide some updated information tonight. It is projected to decrease by $1 million. That could change by October when we get state certified aid, but did want to provide that update to the community. This chart represents our percent value per student versus the average and the cost ratio. So the blue line is our percent value per student as it compares to the state average. So you can see in 15-16 we had a higher value per student compared to the state average. And as it's gone down, you'd see our cost ratio goes up. So the less property rich we become, the more in state aid we get. And that's sort of an inverted relationship. As you can see, our value per student is increasing and our cost ratio is decreasing. From a historical perspective, we have increased in state aid over the years. This last year had a high of state aid, but we do anticipate a reduction this fall. In terms of timeline and process, the budget is a year-long process starting in November and culminating in October with the adjusted budget. Today we are at the annual meeting, which is, in essence, the preliminary budget in an annual meeting setting with some updates here and there. So why don't we have the final budget by July 1st? The start of our fiscal year is because we don't have all the information that we need. We do get that July 1st state aid estimate from DPI, but it's not final. It's based on districts' final costs from the 24-25 school year, which isn't done until the end of August. So they can't finalize state aid until October. We don't have our third Friday count information yet. That is actually happening this Friday. We will get those recording and finalized by early October. And our equalized value won't be received until October 1st, and then finally our general state aid on October 15th. So this is an overview of the preliminary budget. I am foreshadowing some changes that may impact the final budget in October, and there will be a presentation of the adjusted budget in October at the board meeting in October. At the time that we built the preliminary budget, we didn't have a state budget. So there were a lot of estimates that we needed to use. We did use a $325 per pupil estimate, and it was included in the state biennial budget. We had to use projected enrollment at the time to determine our revenue limit revenue. I'm happy to say at this point in time, we have about 17 more kids than we had projected in terms of revenue limit, which is positive. That means more revenue. We estimated flat categorical aid at $742 per pupil, and that was also included in the state biennial budget. We did estimate special education aid of 33.3%. The state set this to 42%. However, it is some certain amount, meaning that this is the pot of money and it's distributed to all districts. And so what we've seen in the past is that even though it's 33.3%, we'll likely receive 30% this year. And so it's never quite the amount that they set. It's always a few percentage points lower. We did estimate salary and benefits 2.95 tied to the consumer price index for base wage. We did also invest almost $1 million in supplemental pay for our employees as we try to reach that 75th percentile for our employee groups. A 2.2% increase in health and dental insurance. This savings that we received from the original forecast was put towards that $1 million in supplemental pay, and the staffing plan that was approved by the Board of Education. The building department budgets are similar, except if there were new curriculum needs, then there was additional increases there. From a long-term planning perspective, we were able to get a capital project of $1 million in this year's budget. So it's out of this year's budget. We didn't have to borrow. It was a variable air volume project for the high school. It's one of those things like you put a roof on your house and it costs a lot of money, and what has changed really? Otherwise, other than not being leaked on. But it was something that was on our long-term capital plan that needed to be done, and happy to say we were able to do it in this budget. We are also able to add about $500,000 to the fund balance, trying to build that back up from the financial situation that we are in. We did have to increase our non-referendum debt to the tune of $7 million. That was for an operational loan to make sure that we could replenish our fund balance and pay our bills. This does mean less revenue for operational expenses. We pay about $2.3 million in this non-referendum debt area, which means we have $2.3 million less each year that we can use for operations that we have to pay debt for. So one of our objectives is to try to whittle down that debt. We do have a 10-year capital project plan. As you can see, over the next 10 years, it's a little over $24 million. I have the cost broken out by year. So this is something that we'll work on with the Finance and Operations Committee, as well as the board, of planning out a funding strategy for that. In addition to those projects, we also have some athletic site and auditorium projects that are estimated to be about $5.3 million in today's dollars. So we'll also need to add that and incorporate that into our long-term plan. So that is some of the work that still needs to be done in the upcoming years. The district has 9 funds. The 2 major funds are Fund 10, it's our general operation fund, and Fund 27, our special education fund. I'll spend most of my time talking about that, but I do have information included in all the other funds in the packet and in the presentation itself. So in all these next slides, I show what was actually spent in 23-24, what our budget was for 24-25, and then our unaudited actual. So you get a picture of sort of like the treasurer's report to show you what we budgeted, what actually happened, and then also obviously our preliminary budget for 25-26. As you can see from a revenue standpoint, we received slightly more in revenue than we had budgeted in 24-25. 25-26 shows a reduction in revenue, but the largest reason for that is this operational loan that we had down here. Obviously we won't have that again. And so that is the reason for that decrease. You'll see also, I talked a little bit about pressure on property taxes. Our property taxes are increasing due to not only the reduction in state aid, but we did have a recurring referendum that was approved for the 25-26 school year to the tune of $6 million. So without additional state aid to bolster that, it falls on property taxes. From a percentage of revenue sources, as you can see, if you look at property taxes and state sources, it makes up over 80% of our revenue. That's from the revenue limit. The next largest piece is from open enrollment, just under 8% from open enrollment. Expenditures by object. In the packet, you'll see expenditures by function. That is the budget adoption format. And so in this presentation, I'm using by object, so you can see it in a little different framework. Salary and benefits, it's sort of the what, and function is the where. So in your packet is the where, up here is the what. So salary and benefits, anticipating a 4% increase there, reduction in purchase services, but you'll see that reduction, oh, didn't mean to do that. You'll see that reduction in purchase services really slid down to the capital object area. That is for purchase of some a mower and some vehicle that we need for operations. So it's really an adjustment between different account codes. Slight reduction in our debt service. This debt service is related to our technology that we lease. It's not related to our operational or not, loan or anything like that. It's our leases for our technology. The transfer to Fund 47, we're required to have a balanced budget in Fund 27. Fund 27, which is special education, it doesn't generate enough revenue to be balanced, so we have to pay for those services through Fund $10. So 2% overall increase in expenditures from the 2024-25 actual. Again, a percent of budget area spend, you'll see salary and benefits at 66%. This is gross, not net. So I will show another slide where we look at this, we take out this transfer amount, this 11%, which is the third highest cost center for our budget. That's that Fund 27 transfer. I'll take that out and I'll show you the net total salary and benefits on our budget. So salaries and benefits, biggest portion, followed by purchase services, and then we have the transfers. From a Fund 1027 salary and benefits, which I just talked about, I do have 23-24 budget to actual for 24-25 and 25-26. The top line is the salaries and benefits from Fund 10 and Fund 27. Then we have the gross expenditures, and then we have the net expenditure. So essentially, I'm just subtracting out the transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 27 because that's a duplicate expense. And as you can see, our salary and benefits really net out to closer to 75-76%. So it's the largest portion of our budget is people. We invest in people. Special education, like I said, the second largest fund that the district manages. We have about a 1% increase in revenues. You'll see a slight decrease in federal sources. That is just due to our allocation and the fact that we were able to use some carryover this year, so it looks like an inflated decrease. Not as big of a difference from what was budgeted for 24-25. And $10.7 million in expenditures, or 1%. Again, from a piece of the pie standpoint, 62.8% of revenues is coming from that transfer. So the majority of revenues for special education come from the Fund 10 transfer, and then the next highest is state sources. From an expenditure standpoint, even larger piece of the pie there, salary and benefits, and then purchase services. Budget to actual, Fund 10 to 27. We budgeted $76.6 million in revenues. We received $77.1 for almost $500,000 more. We spent 71.2, actually spent 70.9 for $279,000 less. So the result there is $774,000 more to our fund balance than we had budgeted for, resulting in a 14% fund balance at the end of 24-25, or a 1.3% increase over what we budgeted. Gift fund. Here are some of the smaller funds that I won't go into too much detail unless anyone has questions. Our gift fund is for donations or our activities account. So girls basketball team, drama, choir, all those fundraisers and things go through this account. That's why we don't have a budget for it. It's kind of inflow and outflow based upon those activities. Our debt service fund, I talked a little bit about this. We have a referendum and a non-referendum debt service fund. This is both together. At the end of 24-25, we had $70.3, almost $4 million in debt. Payments for both Fund 38 and 39. You'll see that we had a large refinancing in 24-25 because we had some principal debt that came due in spring, and we didn't have $3 million to pay that debt, and it was planned to be refinanced at some time to more favorable interest rate. These are the debt issues we have remaining in Fund 38 and 39. You'll see there's one in Fund 39 that will fall off next year. So what that means is that's direct property tax relief, because Fund 39 debt, we're able to increase our levy to make that payment. So $3 million will be coming off our taxes in the 2026 school year. The next most most current payment that we'll be paying off is one of our energy projects in 2028. However, we do receive some subsidies for those payments, less the anticipated savings in energy that we get for those projects. This is our cadence of debt service payments over the course of the next few years. Fund 39 is the light blue. That is referendum debt, and Fund 38 is non-referendum debt. So you'll see that $2.4 million payment in 25-26. So we have that, for the next few years. Then it goes down to $2 million, and then 2033-34, it goes down even more, until we get to that 800,000-ish mark. But we'll talk more with finance and operations and the board on trying to get at that a little bit faster. Capital Projects Fund, this is a fund where when we borrow, we put the proceeds of that borrowing to pay for all of the expenditures out of that came from those resolutions from the borrowing. We're still working on projects out of that right now. There is about $900,000-ish left in that. We do plan to spend that out in 25-26 or 26-27. If we have remaining funds, we use those to pay off our debt. So anything remaining that isn't on the resolution of those debt issues will be used to pay off the debt earlier. Our food service fund is a self-sustaining fund, meaning the revenues that we do generate offset the expenditures. We did utilize a planned fund balance in 24-25 for some capital replacements. There is an amount that DPI doesn't want districts to have, make money off of their program. And so, you really don't want to keep too high of a fund balance, enough for maybe 3 months of operations, plus maybe some planned capital projects. We do have a lot of equipment that is old and aging, and we will have a plan to replace those with some of our fund balance. But we do plan on a balanced budget for 25-26 at this point. Our community service fund is Fund 80. We have our RAP Care program that goes through Fund 80. We also have our pool, and our SROs are through that fund. This is a fund that allows us to add to our levy to offset the costs from those programs. And our cooperative program is a consortium, the Dane County program that we are no longer the fiscal agent for in 25-26. That's why you see zeros there. So we're just closing out that consortium in the 24-25 year. From an all expenditure standpoint, you'll see our budgeted expenditures will decrease by 0.6% for fiscal 25-26. What does that mean for property taxes? As we talked earlier, we do have more pressure on our property taxes because of that recurring referendum and the reduction in aid. So our property taxes are projected to increase 14.8%. So total levy 14.8%. The estimated tax rate, this is utilizing our equalized tax, our equalized value, and estimating almost a 5% increase to determine what that levy will be. It's all municipalities, so it's equalized, it's generalized across all of the districts. At this point, it's estimated to be $10.55, which is a 9% increase. The reason why it's 9% and not 14.8 is because that property value is projected to go up 5%, and actually it's projected to go up more like 11%. So that will change the number to go down. And as you look at your own personal tax bills, it's really not, it's not the equalized value, it's the assessed value that your municipality assesses. So you really have to look at the value of your home. If it went up more than 11%, you're probably going to see even higher taxes. If it goes, it's the same, let's say the levy was the same, and your property value went up 11%, your tax would be the same. If it went up higher, it would be higher. If lower, lower. Our tax levy is going up, so it's just better. It's an easier analogy to talk about, like, all things being equal, if everything was the same, and your the equalized value went up 11%. Your personal home went up under 11%. Lower taxes, higher 11%, higher taxes. From a historical perspective, our mill rate is still lower than what it has been in the past, so that's a good sign. So we'll continue to do what we can to maximize our aid in the future to keep that pressure off taxes. And we still have the adjusted budget yet to do. We will present that tentatively on October 28th. I don't know that we finalized that yet, but it does need to be towards the end of October so that we can certify our levy in time. Adjustments to that, to the preliminary budget, to create the adjusted budget, are in new hires over the summer, our final insurance premiums, salary and benefit changes, and then some of the things I talked about, like the third Friday count, our certified state aid and equalized property value. That concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. And it's okay if you don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right, now that we have been edified with information from our superintendent and deputy superintendent, we get to do the fun job of making motions and passing them, hopefully. So these are our business items for today. First, we need to adopt a tax levy as discussed. So this is a suggested motion that somebody can make from the floor. Once we have a motion and a second, we will discuss the motion and vote on it. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I, Lydia Bertram.
Oh, wait, can you wait for the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thanks.
I, Lydia Bertram of 504 School Road, move approval of a 2025-2026 tax levy in the amount of $38,219,953.
What a very specific number you chose. Do we have a second?
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, move or second the tax levy, 2025-2026 tax levy in the total amount of $38,219,953.
Thank you very much. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we get to vote on salaries or stipends, which was a topic of contention last year. Let's say the compensation for our school board members. We have a suggested motion. As a note, last year, the community set the stipend at $2,000 per school board member. Do we have a motion?
I, Reed Foster of 3011 Red Hawk Trail, Cottage Grove, move to set the 2025-26 annual salaries of the school board members at $2,000.
Thank you. Do we have a second? You had to be all the way on the other side, didn't you? Katie's got to work with that microphone.
I, Jennifer Kelly of 4600 Taniwatha Trail, second the motion.
I think that's fine. Just second the motion is fine. Yeah. Thank you very much. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. And then I think this is our last, nope, we haven't, one more. Reimbursement of school board member related expenditures. This is for expenses incurred in the course of being our school board members, attendance of things like conferences, I believe, things like that. Do we have a motion?
I, Lydia Bertram of 504 School Road, Cottage Grove, move to authorize the reimbursement of school board members for expenses incurred in the performance of duties.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Thank you. The motion carries. Now, we get to do this all again next year. We need a motion to authorize the school board to establish the date, time, and place of the 2026 annual meeting. Somebody else want to make a motion? Get in on this excitement. Yeah.
Elizabeth Wheeler of 6004 Ridgewood Avenue, Monona, Wisconsin, move to authorize the school board to establish a date, time, and place of the 2026 annual meeting and budget hearing.
Do we have a second?
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, second that motion.
Do we have any discussion of this contentious motion? We do not. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Okay. Other business. Is there any other business? Okay. Look at that. Does anyone want to make a motion? Let this side do it.
I, Katie Morrow of 319 Southern Grange, Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, move that the meeting be adjourned.
Do we have a second?
I, Lydia Bertram of 504 School Road, Cottage Grove, second the motion.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say nay. Thank you. Motion carries. I'm done.